One of the phrases I used to hate is what doesn't break you makes you. And I'm thinking, yeah, sure, but don't keep testing me. Do you know? And if you're one of those people who relates to that, thinking, okay, enough of the testing. But as you say, in hindsight, in the rearview mirror, and through where I'm living at the moment, I've realized that just like with gold, you know, that precious metal that was born in a star, to extract it, to get it to where it is, where we use it as jewelry and as regalia, it has to go through a furnace. It has to be crushed and it has to become molten for then for you to express the true beauty of that.
Amos Madra.
Sanjiv Patel, a very warm welcome to you. Educator, coach, mentor, goodness me, there's so much more to who you are as a person. And I don't think I'm doing it any justice in mentioning those things. You're such a unique person. You've got a great soul. And I just cannot wait for the audience to learn more about you as a remarkable human being and someone with just a beautiful soul. A warm welcome to you.
Amos, I'm humbled. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be invited to your show. I've seen some of the work you've done, and I think it's inspiring and wonderful that we're trying to help as many people as possible out there in whatever way we can. So sure, I'm looking forward to our chat and sharing some ideas and thoughts.
So tell me about, your childhood growing up. What was life like? How did you become the person that you are today?
I was brought up in 70s and 80s England as an immigrant child. I was born in Nairobi, Kenya, interestingly. And as a young puppy, my parents picked me up and brought me to the UK in the hope of a better life. But those early years were all, when I think back to that time, it was all about just fighting to survive, and in whichever way that might be. I remember my childhood being in one bedsit after another, 4 of us crammed into a room, mom and dad working every hour God sends to build a life for us. And for me, there was a conditioning. Then I would look back as to what that was about. My father had lost his father when he was only 12 years old. And so he'd had to work and strive for everything he could do in life. And so there was a message subtly in there, which is hard work, keep your head down, your nose clean. And the way to succeed is to follow a single trajectory, which was, get these grades, go and do certain subjects at college, and get into a profession. And that seemed, certainly from my father's point of view, the only way for people like us to get ahead. Now, I have a wonderful older brother, Dr. Sanjiv Patel, who's out in Australia at the moment. The two of us are really close, but we couldn't be any different in terms of our professional choices and aspirations. He's always wanted to be a doctor. And he's, I refer to him as the best doctor I know on the planet. He's always been there for me at those crucial moments, and people I know, my loved ones and friends. But for me, that was never my calling, or I never thought it was. In fact, I was one of those people who didn't know what he wanted to do. So I was a bit lost. At a time when my peers were getting into very clear directions through the university pathway into careers, I found myself studying things I had to study, if you like. These are the subjects you must study. Struggling but fighting away, not doing particularly well. So the thought of being a failure used to come across my mind. There was an expectation, unwritten expectation in the household, in the family, in the wider circles that, of course, you'll do well. Now, I was a bright kid, but I just wasn't academic. And at the time, nobody in my environment kind of understood that, or acknowledged that, or accepted that. So I came to a stage in my journey where I'd finished all the formal pathways, and I hadn't really done very well and I was lost. But what do I do now? Is this it? Is this set for the rest of my life? And I kind of looked inside and I thought, well, all this time I've been working to everybody else's standards, everybody else's expectation, everybody else's rules. And, you know, many of us do that through life, whether consciously or subconsciously. But I find myself consciously saying, right, from now on, this is who I am. I'm going to set my own standards, my own benchmarks, my own expectations. And those expectations were not so much about a percentage or things like that. It's just being 100% in for everything, being my best self, being present for everything I did every single day. And I knew deep down that that's the best I could do. I've started my journey of discovery through that time, and I continue to do that, looking for inspiration, listening to people, speaking to people, reading about people. And so at that time, I guess I defined myself previously as a failure compared to everybody else and without hope because I'd not met this normal trajectory. But I found inspiration in those who have come through incredible challenges through their lives, through history and in current day. I'm thinking, well, okay, so I have a choice. I can be one of those. What's stopping me? What's stopping me be the exception to the rule? And I think everything that's happened since in my life has been based on that kind of outlook, being able to see the positive, whatever the noise. And, you know, I'm really grateful and humbled by the sorts of opportunities I've had since. And I never would have dreamed I would have achieved any of those if if you'd spoken to the young man at the early 20s and said to him, look, one day you'll be on the advisory board for Warwick Business School. You would have spent 8 years chairing their global mentoring program, representing an amazing global alumni population. I'd kind of go, well, how am I qualified for that? But I think what's wonderful about the day and age we live in is that we can actually pretty much dream our future. We can find a way to get to where we want to if we want it strongly enough. And I put that down to, Amos, if I may, finding a purpose or meaning or reason why. So most people have heard of the pursuit of happiness, but I think happiness is a consequence of living a life with meaning, purpose, and knowing your reason why. So yeah, that's quite a long answer, but that's where I am and that's my background.
That's an incredible answer. You know, there's so much to dissect and take from that. You know, feeling lost, feeling as a failure. There was a lot of lows, and you know, going through those low points, I'm sure that at that time didn't feel great, but when you look back in hindsight, I'm sure you're thankful for those times because it made you the person that you are today. In retrospect, you can see where your North Star is now, and that North Star is your purpose. How do we find our purposes? Do we have to go through difficulties in order to find the person that we were born to be?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I can answer it in a simple way, but I'll give it a go. So firstly, in terms of the lows, one of the phrases I used to hate is what doesn't break you makes you. And I'm thinking, yeah, sure, but don't keep testing me. Do you know? And if you're one of those people who relates to that, thinking, okay, enough of the testing. But as you say, in hindsight, in the rearview mirror, and through where I'm living at the moment, I've realized that just like with gold, you know, that precious metal that was born in a star, to extract it, to get it to where it is, where we use it as jewelry and as regalia, it has to go through a furnace. It has to be crushed. and it has to become molten for you to express the true beauty of that. The same thing about diamonds. The compression it has to go through, carbon has to go through. So does, as a young child, if someone said to you, you're going to have to go through the mill to be able to become the diamond, is that something you really want to hear? No. But I'm a real believer in all of us, spiritually, philosophically, through the journey of life, that each one of us has our own deck of cards that we're dealt at the beginning. And life is like a game. And at each turn of cards, at each round, you can sit there and go, now what do I do with this? What happens is, and I remember looking back at my challenging times, there were times that I hope the listeners will relate to, whereas you sit there and go, why me? Why me? After all I've done, after all of this, why suddenly this challenge? But I guess a great example of how not to look at that is Arthur Ashe. Arthur Ashe turned that on his head. Arthur Ashe was the first Black Wimbledon champion ever in history. He was at the height of his career, and he had all the accolades and everything going for him in life. Unfortunately, he contracted AIDS through a blood transfusion, through no activity of his own, just harmlessly had to undergo a procedure, and through that blood transfusion, he contracted AIDS. Now, in those days, survival rates were tough. And people asked him, I think a reporter famously asked him, well, so do you not regret this? Do you not ask, why me? Why did I have to get this at the peak of my career? And quite wonderfully, he said, well, when after this many people, X number of people going to play tennis as a child, only a certain fraction get to go and take that up in the professional rounds. Of those professional rounds, only a certain fraction of those make them to the big tournaments. Of that fraction, only a certain fraction get to Wimbledon finals. And what percentage actually win it? Did I ever ask why me along that journey? And life's like that. So if I'm going to sit there and go, why me at the tough times, then I should celebrate the why me, how special I am, how chosen I am to have been able to achieve this. And I think, life's too short to worry about the why and carry it as a load. Sure, we learn from things that we can learn from. But I remember putting up a post one day, look, a ship, however amazing it is, can't set sail or can't take off and take away from to further shores unless you lift up the anchor. And like many of us have dreams, have aspirations, but we're hanging on to stuff. We're hanging on to limiting beliefs, which we all have. And again, I'd like to share that openly with people. I work with business leaders around the world. I work with people who are at early stage of their careers or people at the other end of the spectrum. We all face the same questions and challenges. Most of us go through imposter syndrome. Most of us have negative self-talk going on. But what's amazing is when you understand how to use this amazing body and mind that we have, that where we focus its attention is the way it directs our future. That's what we see. I don't know, what car do you drive? Random question, but what car do you drive?
Ford Focus.
Ford Focus.
Yeah.
So was that something that you'd look forward to before you bought it?
Yeah, I did want it, and I was looking forward to it.
Sure. If you're anything like me, whenever I've bought a new car or bought something, suddenly when my mind is looking for that, I suddenly see lots of them.
Yeah.
Up until then, yeah, sure, whatever it might be. And it's the same thing in life. When you look for opportunity as opposed to look for what's going to go wrong. Look for the next setback, because that's what we will see and that's how we will behave and react. So in terms of dealing with challenges and setbacks, let's be honest, all of us around the world are facing challenging, tough times at the moment, unprecedented. That rather than worry about the what if it goes wrong, accept this is part of this journey. This is the ocean journey where we've got stormy weather coming. Okay, but guess what? In all of that, there are people who are going to make positive choices. They're going to go, okay, this is what I need to do to prepare for it, to get through it. At the same time, we'll look for opportunity. We'll look for ways of growth. Now, those don't necessarily have to be financial growth. It can be spiritual growth. It can be personal growth. It can be physical development. During lockdown, you know, myself and my family were one of the early people to contract COVID. And at the time, it was horrible and it was painful. And, you know, my father and I ended up in the ICU unit, and unfortunately, I lost him. In all of that journey, my focus was trying to do the best I could each day, looking out for the people that mattered to me, looking out for ways I could fight out of this, sure. But as it got worse and worse, tougher and tougher, my focus just narrowed down. I cut out the noise and focused on the present. And I think anybody facing challenges, don't think too big, don't make it daunting. Your aim, your goal to break out of this. Set yourself small targets and focus on those. You don't climb a mountain by looking at the top all the time. You climb a mountain by one step at a time. You don't climb a mountain by going, how far have I got to go? You set your direction, you make sure you're on course, and you keep going. And you're going to get boulders in the way, you're going to get blizzards in the way, and all of that. But that's what the successful people in life, the ones who fly through life, who live through life, that's how they navigate it. And I've been learning that, and I'm still learning it. But when those moments are where you tune into that, when you get a challenge and you can laugh it off to the extent of, sure, okay, why not? When you can look at it and thinking, okay, there are 7+ billion people on the planet. Compared to those, where do I stand in terms of how fortunate I am, how blessed I am? And when you're feeling lonely, that's a difficult thing to do. When you've had a setback from a relationship, that's a difficult thing to do. When you're uncertain about your job or financial prospects, it's a difficult thing to do, but there is always perspective. And I'm sitting there going, okay, what can I learn? What can I do differently? What can I do to move forward? And as human beings, we are conditioned to be able to forget as well. So however traumatic or difficult we've faced in terms of challenges, if we let go, if we face it, feel it, and then let go, we can grow from it and heal from it.
That's a wonderful, wonderful explanation. And if your life is based on that foundation, that solid ground, and from there, you know, when the wind and the storm comes, you can pretty much get through anything. You know, how can you've so eloquently explained so many things that we can do. How can we keep that persistence? How can we keep renewing our mind to that truth, and to just take that small step each day, but to focus on that base and that foundation?
There are lots of things we can do, lots of little things. It's creating healthy habits, for example. So when I have a tough day, when things don't go to plan, when I get curveballs and I get setbacks, I'll do my best on that day, but I'll learn to switch off and let go that evening. Tomorrow is a fresh start. I get the choice. If, you know, God gives me breath in the morning, I have the choice how I face that day. So I start the day, and I suggest it's a useful thing to try for everybody listening. To take 10 minutes right at the beginning of your day is just to close your eyes and focus on your breath. Just slow breathing. Just focus on your breath. It doesn't have to be complicated meditation, but what that does, it cuts out all the noise that we have, and it starts our day from a position of calm. And you know, and I know through experience, that when we're calm, we're at our best. When we're composed, we're at our best. You know, dealing with challenges with a calm mind is the best we can do, right? And remember, I started this whole conversation about setting my standard as the best I can do. Not what anybody else can do with their deck of cards or their circumstances, the best I can do. So you have to be kind to yourself as well. Quite often we are so critical of ourselves. So we should have achieved this, we should have done this, my friends have got this, other people in my group are telling me this. You know, society is full of social media where people position their lives falsely. They make, you know, they create images of a reality which is, even in their minds, isn't a reality. Social media is that powerful. I tune down the social media and I make no qualms about that. Choose what you feed yourself. Just like we physically feed ourselves and make choices, and we can think about scientifically the impact on ourselves. The same way I've been taught from a younger age from my mentor and spiritual master, His Holiness Pramukh Swami, that our senses create our world, our reality. So what we expose our eyes to, our ears to, the people and the vibes that we surround ourselves to, genuinely form and create our future and our reality. So do an audit, look around and see, well, where are we getting, are we surrounding ourselves with the right environment? Are we watching the right things? You know, I have conversations with my kids. There's some very low context TV material, reality shows on from time to time. And I'm thinking, look, I get it. It's like junk food, right? But you've got to be aware of junk food. You've got to be aware that, okay, sure, the odd occasion, it's okay. But over time, it becomes part of the way we think, the way we perceive ourselves. And it is about us as much as anybody else, right? It's our happiness. I'm not here to preach to anybody how, you know, we should look at anything apart from this is all about our own individual happiness. And my journey has sort of given me insight through experience, sometimes difficult experience, through learning, through being inspired by amazing people who I look at and thinking, how on earth are you able to navigate this? Whether it's amazingly high or amazingly, you know, a setback, but with a smile on your face. And I'm thinking, if I can do that, if I can face success and failure in the same way, understanding that life is still a game, and my task and challenge is to do the best I can each day, that's fantastic. So starting with a quiet moment of contemplation, thinking about how I'm nourishing myself and making small changes. I go for walks, and I suggest people do that. I used to think walking was the most boring thing in the world because I was a sporty guy. But since lockdown, I'm thinking, you know what? It's that personal quiet time. Whereas you can listen to stuff, but listen to stuff that inspires you and elevates you. Be careful what you listen to. Or you can talk to people. Again, talk to the people that can help. You can help each other or that inspire you. Taking in negativity is not healthy fuel. You know, worrying about what's going on through the news media, it's not changing. It's happening. So why do we need to keep telling ourselves that? Because that just conditions the way we feel. Whereas, yeah, sure, take stock from time to time, but then live life. Look around at the people in our lives and think, you know what? If this was the last day of my life, what would I look back at? What different choices would I make about my relationships and the way I speak to people and think about people? Who would I say thank you to? Here's a tip. Every day, look at your phone book, pick one person randomly and send them a message. Tell them why you're grateful to have them in your life, or appreciate them for something that they've done or some interaction you've had. It works both ways. That simple thing works both ways, because the person on the receiving end suddenly feels, wow, okay, I didn't expect that, but it makes them feel good clearly. But equally for us, it starts framing our perception differently. We start to realize the things that we do have in our lives. And as I said, letting go, it's difficult for most, but learning to just let go. You can't let a hot air balloon rise without letting go of the sandbags, right? It only gets to a certain level. There's a reason for having sandbags, to keep it down. But at times when you want to be elevated, you've got to let go. You've got to fuel that helium balloon with more gas, positive stuff. That will lift you.
Incredible.
And doing that as a routine daily.
Incredible. This is just this is gold dust. This information, this is pure gold. Just that simple analogy of letting go. We seem to want to hold on to things, and we feel that if we don't grab onto the little that we have, it'll be taken away from us, and it's just that race to everybody's on that rat race. But when you learn to let go and you realize the abundance that's around you, and everything just comes quite simply to you, and it's just learning to switch our mind and to start thinking about letting go rather than trying to grip on. Incredible.
Nelson Mandela, an inspirational person for all of us around the world, right? That everything that I've ever read or heard about him is inspiring. But in terms of letting go, he was imprisoned for almost 27 years through doing nothing wrong but standing up for what he believed was right and for the people. He put himself out there. And many of us will do that in a small way in our daily lives, whether it's in a small way for our families, we'll stand up and go out there and stretch ourselves, or for our employers or our workmates, or for bigger causes. But he was able to let go of the me in that, the I in that. He said, yeah, sure, I was confined, but I had a choice of how am I going to think about this and live through this. And he let go of the baggage of the pain. He let go of the personalities and saying, each character was playing their part in this. And I'm a firm believer that people come through our lives for a reason. Some come to teach us tough lessons about ourselves. Some come to our lives for a certain period of time to help us grow. And there are some people who will always be there for us, whether we speak to them regularly or not. And when you start looking at life through that lens, and we're just all playing our role. And if you're a character on a stage and the director is someone out there saying, okay, this is your next scene, go for it. Play it to the fullest every day. And play it without that weight of expectation, of I need, I want, because we've experienced the amount of times we've chased something and we've achieved it. We know something called hedonic adaptation means it wears off. So the happiness starts from inside. The happiness starts with dealing with the baggage that we're carrying around and work on it bit by bit. Don't be overawed by what you see. Let me share a metaphor my guru shared with me, and I loved it. He said, look, we're all like a beautiful glass of clear water, crystal clear water in a clear glass, but all of us have baggage. Imagine that baggage as the settled stuff at the bottom. You can't see it. In most easy times, you can't see that. But when you start shaking that, when you start looking inside, what happens to a glass of water that has dust that's settled or mud that's settled? It becomes murky. And that can scare us. That can spook us. But he said, at a time like that, you really have two choices. One is to freak out and stand back and let it settle. Don't face it. Or you can say, sure, this is the same for everybody. But if I can deal with cleaning this out, filtering it bit by bit, then over a period of time, the water purifies permanently. And that sense of being, that sense of, being your true self, your fullest self, is an amazing feeling. Some people find it through spirituality, people like myself. Other people find it through purpose in terms of a cause, dealing with stuff and then trying to make a difference in whichever arena they're trying to do helps them. But inside, all of us have parts of our nature that we know we could improve, we could work on. And so be our best friend, because to our best friend, we'll always be compassionate, we'll always be caring, but we'll prompt them in the right direction because we care. But think about ourselves in the same way. Take those little steps, be honest, think about it, and take one small step at a time.
Wow, absolutely incredible. This is, I've been looking forward to this talk all day, and it's just, you know, the things that you're saying, it seems so simple, but just the value in it, you know, there's so much that we can get from this, you know, and I'm sure the audience listening to this are going to want to connect with you. What can we expect in the future? What are you doing? And, you know, how can they connect with you as well?
Again, very kind of you, Amos. I have a social media tag which is Sanjiv Speaks. It's something that came to life because of ultimately listening to my reason why, my purpose, my calling, where I look to try and share ideas and thoughts that I hope can make a difference. I work with businesses, but also individuals in trying to help them through that journey. So Sanjiv Speaks is now looking at writing a book. So watch this space. And in terms of what you'll see on the social media front, I was fortunate enough to be asked to do a TED Talk. And the TED Talk is on the 3 R's: reflect, reframe, and reset. It's a model that I created, which I feel will be really useful, especially in the climate that we're in, the challenging times. And I'm looking to get more engaged in terms of podcasts like this and to help a wider audience. So if there's anything that the listeners feel that they'd like me to talk about, share some ideas and thoughts about, please engage with my social media. And I look forward to staying in touch with you, Amos, because you're doing some amazing work. And I'm truly thankful and grateful to be a part of this whole program with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sanjiv. Your wisdom, your love, your peace, it's just it's wonderful, it's beautiful. And if we can get just a small snippet of that and apply that to our lives, we'll be able to do incredible things. And you know, we've just been blessed by your presence and just by your wisdom. And I just want to say a huge thank you for that. Thank you very much.
Honestly, the pleasure's mine, and thank you very much for inviting me.
If you want some amazing inspiration, check out the videos next to me, and I'll see you right there.